I'm going to be starting us off today and sharing a PowerPoint. We're going to cover some basics. Those of you who have been PTIs for us in the past, hopefully these things sound familiar to you. But we're also going to leave some time at the end for questions as well. And each of the panelists will have a chance to jump in and share additional information with you, okay? So with that, let me share my screen. So first off, if we haven't said it to you before enough, thank you very much. Part instructors are unsung heroes a lot of the times. And I know from personal experience, sometimes we're calling on you even last minute sometimes because we need to add sections. So thank you for stepping in and being an integral part of what we do and helping out our students. So getting started. So for those of you who are new to being a part-time instructor, some of this will be hopefully really important, but maybe you've already heard some of this. We want to reiterate that some of this information can be really valuable in helping you move forward and getting a good head start. So first thing is setting up your courses, right? If you sure that the textbook and the correct textbook is ordered for your class so that students can access the bookstore. We know particularly during remote instruction, we have a lot of students who are ordering copies of their textbooks through Amazon and Chegg and other places as well. But we want to make sure that they do have access. So just out with the bookstore. If you need a copy of the textbook, you can always contact the publisher directly. I know sometimes I've received an e-copy from them just because it's faster than waiting for a hard copy. But if you are waiting for someone, can't get an e-copy with your department and see if somebody has the copy that you could borrow to get started with. Also, make sure that you have access into Web Campus. We also refer to that as Canvas because Canvas powers what we do in Web Campus, which is our web-based portal, right, for all of our instruction. Again, because of remote instruction, most of us are teaching online. That becomes even more important. There is a link provided in the PowerPoint to Web Campus, or you do what I normally do. Go to Google and type in Web Campus UNLV, and that gets me where I need to go. Hopefully you have a point person in your department. Maybe that's a program coordinator or a faculty mentor or content expert for the class that you're teaching. I would encourage you to stay in touch with them in anything that relates to the actual course material that you're teaching, questions about that. And the Office of Online Education has really applied note to me and my colleagues as far as setting up our courses, making sure we manage Canvas correctly. Maybe you're importing course content from another course shell, things like that. So for instance, our rep over there is Ted Wiseman. He came on board during the semester last year, and everyone over there I've worked with has been great. And Ted has certainly been very helpful. So to contact the Office of Online Ed, again, there's contact information here on the PowerPoint, or you can do like I do and go to Google and type in things like UNLV Office of Online Education, right? Somehow I'm not good with the links or remembering contact information. There's also a link that I'm looking at recently for tips for teaching remotely in specific. So if you're in remote instruction, you might want to check that one out as well. All right. So getting started Canvas. The first thing I always ask everybody to do, if you have content that's been exported from another course, from another instructor, the first thing I ask our to do is unpublish your course. So when you're hands in your top hand corner, or quite the right hand corner, but toward the top right of your screen, you'll see publish and publish. So unpublish so that students don't see all the editing that you're doing, or they don't pop in halfway and see a syllabus that maybe is not finished, right, and have the wrong expectations. Once I've unpublished, then I go in and I check the syllabus. And I make sure that my name is on it, my correct contact information, my office hours, etc., are all in that syllabus, because that's my contract with my students, right? And I want to make sure they know how to reach me. Because we're all meeting, most of us are meeting with our students virtually, thinking about the virtual office hour for your students is up to you. But if you're going to use Zoom or WebEx, you can even add a link right in your syllabus as well. For those of us who have a need that we must see our students every week, I meet my students synchronously during my regular scheduled time. I know some people are meeting asynchronous, providing additional resources through Canvas. But if you're meeting synchronously, that Zoom and WebEx link is really important. I also put that announcement so that it's getting to my students more than just one way. Making sure that you are syncing date in your syllabus with any assignments, discussions that you have listed in Canvas, and you have tabs for those items, becomes really valuable. So sometimes, for instance, I copied over course content this spring from a class I taught last spring. Well, of course, all my dates are set for 2020. I don't want those dates showing up, right, for my course this semester. So I have to make sure, double check my dates in my syllabus, as well as in every module, every assignment that I can in Canvas, so that everything is synced and correct. I'm program coordinator for the undergrad in human services. So most complaints I get from students are that the syllabi and the dates aren't always synced up. So just double check that. I make mistakes with sometimes as well. So that's an easy fix. Then once you've done all of your edits and you have everything good to go, I like to go and look at everything in the student view. And so again, towards the top right of your screen canvas, it now looks like a set of glasses, I think, and you click on that and it shows you the student view. So then you can see, okay, do I really have the things open that I want students to see? Is it manageable for them? Can they move through this? If there's anything different, I can then back to my view and make those changes. So I've double checked, triple checked. Then I need to make sure and publish my course. So switching from unpublished to publish. Okay. The last thing I recommend that you do, and those of you who are pros probably already know to do this, but post an announcement introducing yourself. I'm Wendy Hoskins, you know, I like peanut butter and jelly on a Sunday morning with my tea, and whatever you want to say about yourself, okay? Yours is probably a little more professional than that, but something personal I think the students all like as well. I'll have to ask them how they feel about the PA. You might also mention in that the syllabi is available and they can take a look at that. I also mentioned the textbook and different ways that they can access the textbook at that point. Again, it's just putting additional information in more than one place to make sure you get all students. Okay. All right. A little bit about UNLV Tools and communication. So if you haven't already, I hope these items become your friends. You feel friendly about them because they're going to be very important to what you do. So my UNLV, right? So you can go to myunlv.edu, or like me, go to Google, my UNLV, and it will get you there. The reason why my UNLV is important is, aside from Canvas, is it shows you class roster, but you will also need it at the end of the semester to do your grades. And we'll talk about that a little bit more in the presentation. You should have received your faculty ID Rebel email. This, hopefully, you are very friendly with, because this is where you're going to get all of your communication, right, in your Rebel mail. We also want to only contact our students through their Rebel mail and through WebCamps. So I try to make sure and encourage and remind students of that frequently. WebCamps, powered by Canvas, we've talked a little bit about, and Zoom and or WebEx on your department, and depending on what you're most comfortable with. There are additional trainings available to you. One of them is your FERPA training. If you've not done that yet, please do that soon. In order to do at the end of the semester to submit your grades, you must have done FERPA training first. So hopefully you've received information about that. Maybe it was emailed to you, but I know every semester I have somebody, last hour saying, I can't find grades, what's the problem? And because they do for training. And it can take up to 72 hours for that clearance to go through. So please don't wait until the end of the semester. Accessibility resources. They provide to help you learn different strategies to make your course content accessible. So everything from adding subtitles and video links, colors, print, availability of Word documents. It's a really valuable thing. It takes, or you can do it a period over. But I found it really helpful and beneficial for our courses. So check them out if you're interested in that. And there's also tons of web campus trainings during the semester, and you can find those out, WC training at unlv.edu. Resources, reminders during the semester. The first thing is just making sure that you have a content expert, a mentor, a program coordinator, the department that you're serving, that you can contact about the specific course that you're teaching. Hopefully, yes, everybody here knows who they can contact, correct? Can I get a thumbs up? I got a few. Okay, a few more. Awesome. Yeah. Joe, I appreciate that you thumbs up too. Yeah, you sometimes might be my contact. The thing I think great is they help you if they've taught this before, they know it in and out. They help you through some of the bumps or why a specific assignment is the way it is. If you're getting a new assignment for someone, maybe different ways that to help you build that content. As far as grading questions, how to grade somebody, rubrics are great. That helps us stay accountable as well. I encourage you to stick with your syllabus when it comes to grading. Sometimes I get questions, can we do extra credit, for instance? Look at this, that's your contract. So think about that first as well. Early alert for grades also. Make sure that if you have students who are not checking in, turning in assignments, maybe missing exams or something, or they're just falling, that you're reaching out to them as well, and letting them know how they're doing in class. Don't wait until the end of the semester, right? So we want to be doing that. Posting announcements, particularly many of us are teaching remotely, right, instead of face-to-face. And some of us are online only or asynchronous. I find that posting those announcements becomes really valuable to the students. They want to hear from you. So these don't have to be big announcements, but check-ins, right? Letting them know you're available if they need anything to check in with you. Sometimes you'll also get maybe an email from the department or the college, maybe the university, to post an announcement in your class. So those might be department student meetings, maybe research opportunities. So please post those announcements in a timely manner as well. So I'm going to turn things over now to Dr. Joe Morgan to talk about some of the questions that come up.
Good afternoon, everyone. I want to echo Dr. Hoskins' comment earlier about thanks for being here and thanks for continuing to teach with us. I stepped into a department chair role on July 1st, and I knew it before, but I know it now that we could not operate without you. So we appreciate you so much. I know sometimes there's a lot of work involved in being a part-time instructor, and I'm so glad that you're here and willing to take that on for our programs and our students to make sure that they're out there changing the world and doing good things for humanity, which is the goal of all of our programs. So welcome. I'm the department chair of the Department of Early Childhood, Multilingual, and Special Education here in the College of Education. And I'm here to talk just a little bit about some common questions or situations that might come up in your courses throughout the spring semester. I want to caveat this entire section with all four departments operate a little bit differently related to some of these things. So as Dr. Hoskins mentioned a couple of times, talk to your faculty mentor, talk to your program coordinator, talk to your department chair. They're going to give you specific information about how different departments and different programs respond to these things. But just globally, these are some things that often arise while you're teaching that you may want to address. One thing that's come up, it comes up all the time, it's come up with even more frequency during the coronavirus pandemic, is requests for extensions from students and what can they do to have additional time to do work, or if you could change due dates, etc. So just be prepared for what your response is going to be in those types of situations. These responses can run the gamut. I'll be very honest with you. I've worked with instructors in the past who said these are the due dates and they were published up front and we're not changing them. That's sometimes the easiest way to do it. Because you don't have to justify what needs an extension, what doesn't need an extension. And I've had other people just have flexible due dates for everything all the time for everybody. So due dates really can be driven by you and what your program expects. What I often recommend to students and what we're going to recommend to you today is if a student asks for an extension or a request, one thing to think about is it a reasonable request? Does it seem like there's, we all know life happens. We all know things occur in students' lives that may require extensions, but they need a little bit of extra time on assignments. And so the extension, is it reasonable? If somebody's asking for an extra 48 hours to complete an assignment, that may be more reasonable than saying, can I turn this in 1 month from now on the schedule? The key part with extensions as assignments is when we develop these courses, they often build on each other. So if one goes too far late, the student isn't getting the critical feedback that they need to do the next assignment in chronological order, et cetera. So as you consider extensions, think about that. How do the assignments fit together? Is giving an extension going to delay them and getting the next part of the task done, et cetera? The second question, and I think is a good one, is are you willing to do this for all students? I'll tell you as an instructor, that's one way that I have, right? Because I don't like to get into the decision-making of what's a reasonable extension versus what's not, because what's reasonable to one person might not be reasonable to another person. And I don't like to be the arbiter of that. So if I have students ask for extensions that I ultimately decide to grant, what I will often do is just give that same extension to everybody. So if somebody asks me for an extension and I give an extra 48 hours, I will often just give the entire class an extra 48 hours, whether they need it or not. Then that way it's just equitable for everybody to have that additional time that's happening. So consider that. If somebody asks for it, is there a situation or life happening? I think during coronavirus, many of us have made extensions that we probably wouldn't have made in the past because there's a lot of stress happening in lives. There's a lot of changing things happening all the time. So just consider that process. And then question 3, I just mentioned that, but does your syllabus allow for it? Is there time left in the semester? Those are all critical things to think about as you think about extensions for assignments. And also think about your own health and well-being. If you give an extension and then one assignment is going to back up right to another assignment, you've got to think about the balance of grading and you've got to think about the amount of work that you're expected to do. So extensions are often instructor decisions for their students, but there are some variables to consider related to extensions and when you decide to give them. Really thinking about the equity across students and then also thinking about your own workload related to what will that extension do to the remainder of your course. The second thing that's come up more frequently is trouble accessing textbooks, primarily if students are doing it digitally or don't feel comfortable coming to campus to pick it up from the bookstore, et cetera. We encourage students to look at a variety of different places to access their textbook. And one thing to encourage students to do that I've found a lot of students, especially graduate students, are not aware of is that the library has many online licenses to many of our textbooks. And so if the textbook is in the library, there are opportunities for students to e-check that book out from the library. So they don't have to purchase it. They don't have to purchase an online key, but they can check it out from the library itself. So give them a variety of options. The UNLV bookstore has great pickup options. They'll deliver textbooks to houses. There's a variety of ways that you can get access to the textbooks, but there are also a variety of other web resources where students might be able to get the access to the textbook directly. So just think about that for those textbook resources. I always encourage my instructors. Sometimes we find, let me think about how to say this. Like sometimes other instructors that aren't us, you'll find full PDF versions of texts, or students will email you and say, you assign this text, but I can download the entire thing for free from this website. Refrain from that. It breaks federal copyright law to be able to download entire versions of textbooks. So we want to refrain from doing those types of things. There are some rules where you can share portions of textbooks for instructional purposes. So if students are a little late getting it, if you want to make a PDF copy of the first chapter for them, we are covered by federal copyright law to be able to provide some access to textbooks. But I would be wary of downloading entire textbooks or sharing that type of information from students, even if it might be out there. So just encourage them to get the textbooks ahead of time, make sure they are on track with those textbooks, and they've got the information that they need. Okay. That's it on that one, Dr. Hoskins. Cool. As you think about due dates for assignments and exams, you really want to watch the calendar. And Dr. Hoskins mentioned it. I always make errors with the dates. I always assign things on like a Saturday and I meant to do it on a Thursday. It's okay, but watch those things ahead of time to make sure that you're avoiding major dates within the holidays. You want to avoid spring break. This semester, spring break is the week of March 15th. So you want to try to not make anything due during that week. It is an off week. It is not a part of the semester. So you want to avoid those things. Monitor spring holidays. For example, Martin Luther King Day is the first day of the semester. President's Day is in February. So you also want to make sure that you're not assigning anything due there. You may also want to monitor religious holidays to try to avoid those if there are any scheduled in the spring semester, so that students aren't expected to do work during times where they may be off or having family events or et cetera. The other thing with due dates is to make sure you give yourself cushion time. Grading can be a beast sometimes in these classes. So you want to make sure you give yourself enough time between assignments to get grading accomplished, that you can make sure you give quality feedback as they go throughout the semester. And so kind of pair them out so that you've got that time built in. I always schedule grading time on my calendar. So once I build my syllabus, I will always put on my calendar grade on Tuesday and Wednesday of this week, so that I know that I can make sure I get that feedback to students in a timely fashion so that they can move on with the remainder of the course. And then I make sure I get that feedback back to them. Watch for study week. So during week 15 of the semester, that's study week for final exams. And so it's university policy that major assignments are not due during that week of the semester, because that week of the semester is designed to be preparation for final exams, which occur in week 16 of the semester. So just kind of watch the academic calendar for there. Usually if you have things due by week 14, that gives you the last 2 weeks to grade. And then if they have the final, they can do that during finals week. But just make sure that you are monitoring that study week during week 15 and trying to avoid any major assignments being due in that week. Finally, if you are meeting during finals week, this is probably not as big of a deal. Well, it might be for undergrads, right? Remember, finals week calendaring does not match the academic calendar. So you may teach your class on Tuesdays from 4 to 6:45, but then your finals week meeting might be Thursday at 10 a.m. So make sure you check the final exam calendar. It's not as big of a deal for the room availability as it is, but remember, those final exams are scheduled differently during finals week. So students have other classes that they have to actually log in and sit live for a final. You want to make sure that you're using your time that's assigned to you during finals week for your final semester of class, or your final week of class. So just be sure to check the scheduling website to check for what your actual exam day and time is during that finals week. The last question is how you handle difficult student issues. And these do come up. I will tell you, and I'm sure my colleagues can jump in and echo this. I've been doing this for 11 years now, and every semester something new comes up that I haven't seen before. So it does happen. I hope it doesn't happen to you, but every once in a while there's a complex issue that comes up that you're just like, I'm not sure what to do. Don't worry, we face those situations also as faculty members where we're like, I've never seen this before, I don't know what to do. So always the first question I encourage my instructors to do in EMS is to reach out to your program coordinator, your mentor, or your department chair. just to say, can you help guide me through the decision-making process here so that I'm making sure that I'm following all the rules and procedures? That becomes important. I say this, and those of you who know me know that I'm an eternal optimist and I don't go down negative paths very often. But it is important that if something does become a more complex issue that needs higher levels of involvement, that we make sure we follow program policies related to the decisions that we make. So it is important that if you have a complex student issue that arises, that you do reach out to somebody on faculty so that we can guide you on what our policies and procedures are. I oftentimes will co-support part-time instructors as the department chair in dealing with student issues. So I'll have the instructor copy me, and then that way I can just make sure that policies and procedures are being followed appropriately, and that we're providing, it's both to make sure that we're doing everything we said we would do for students, and then to make sure that we're doing the same thing for different students in a similar situation. We want to be equitable and paritable for all students who are having similar issues in a particular course. Student issues may be related to work. They may be related to access. They may be, we've had some in the past where a student just didn't like the grade that they received and they had questions about why the grade existed the way that they did. You'll find a lot, and I say this a little tongue in cheek, a lot of issues are like, well, I talked to 4 other students and they told me blank. And so you'll get a lot of those things where you have to figure out what to navigate and how to respond to students. I always, my first approach, I'll tell you as a faculty member, is to start with kindness and understanding. Most of the time when there's an issue, 9 times out of 10, we've gotten to the bottom of it just through a meeting or a discussion. I encourage you during coronavirus, this is just my personal advice, no official policy. If you have an issue, a student who has a concern that they've raised, I would encourage a meeting of some kind via Zoom or Google Meets. I know a lot of conflict that was created in the fall was misunderstandings of email. Where people just were not reading emails the same way. And so something that was a really easy fix up front just kind of got lost in the shuffle. So having a quick Google Meet for 5 minutes to just discuss it, most of the time student concerns can be addressed through those one-on-one conversations. If it does elevate to a level that we need to get other people in the university involved, that's our next slide. There is an office called the Office of Student Conduct, which the Office of Student Conduct, there's their website and their contact information. The Office of Student Conduct is on campus to be able to help us, I've lost my word, but balance conflicts between instructors, departments, and the student to make sure that we're following university policies. Generally, the Office of Student Conduct gets involved as a last-minute effort. If conversations, I always tell my instructors, we start with the student instructor to resolve a conflict, and then move up to the program coordinator and then to the department chair. And we try to follow a hierarchy to kind of get to a point where we can give a solution to the student and the instructor. Very rarely, I have found in my history, I don't know about what my colleagues think, but we've had to involve the Office of Student Conduct. This can be related to plagiarism or academic misconduct of some kind, where students are copying papers or taking other people's assignments and turning them in, et cetera. It could also be concerns about appropriate student behavior. So behavior in class, swearing, et cetera, those types of things where you might be concerned about the student's impact on other students or the student's impact on you. You can make claims of student concern with the Office of Student Conduct. So that office is there as kind of a neutral party outside of all of our divisions to be able to advise us on student policies, support us if we have concerns about students, or if some level of academic misconduct like plagiarism has occurred, or reusing assignments from other classes or those types of things. They kind of help us navigate the university policies related to those things. But again, I hope most of you, and I have a feeling most of you, won't ever need to get to that level of a conversation with students that might have concerns. Most of it, I'm telling you, 9 times out of 10, a quick conversation deals with most issues that students might have between the course. And it's often just a misunderstanding that they had between the instructor. The final the university thing to be aware of as you get started is the Disability Resource Center. So the Disability Resource Center is on campus, designed to provide access for individuals with disabilities to your coursework. And so if a student has an identified disability that requires that we make some accommodations for access so that they can learn the course content with you, they have to open a case with the DRC, and then they're assigned a DRC specialist who kind of advocates for them and helps them identify what their accommodations are. As adults with disabilities, they are encouraged to contact their instructor and let them know that they have a disability that requires accommodations, and then discussing with you what those accommodations might look like in your coursework. The DRC also will send you an email with their accommodations. And so it's usually a PDF form. I encourage you all to remember that's confidential. And so if you do have a question for your department chair, et cetera, those emails, we shouldn't just forward those emails with the accommodations. Those are confidential between the student and the instructor. You can ask your department chair questions like, I have a student with accommodations. How might I do that within this course without naming the student themselves? The other question you can do is you can reach out to the DRC directly. The case managers in the DRC help instructors figure out how to make different accommodations for students, how to adapt accommodations for different students with disabilities. And so those accommodations forms usually are pretty prescriptive. They tell you exactly what needs to happen. Pay attention to those, because there are some times where a student needs like extended time in a quiet setting where they may schedule to go take the exam at the DRC itself. There's scheduling and resource sharing between our departments and the DRC that needs to happen. So pay attention to those accommodations up front. If there are accommodations that require more extensive work, just make sure you budget those into your syllabus to make sure we get the materials over to DRC in time. Some of them some accommodations are like a student has a note taker in class, where another student would take notes. They're paid. So you would send out an email to say, we need a note taker for class. Is there anybody willing to do it? They would take notes and be paid by the university to do that. And then they would share their notes with the student with the accommodation. So there may be some accommodations where you're asked to do some additional work to make sure that we're providing access for the student that's in the class. So just pay attention to those as they come. And if you have questions about general accommodations, you can ask your faculty mentor. If you have student-specific accommodations, reach out to the DRC and you can ask the DRC coordinator about what that might look like in your own classroom environment.
All right, so after doing all of those things, you finally get to finals week. So as a reminder, when you go to submit your final grade, this is not Web Campus or Canvas, but you need to submit final grades through My UNLV. We talked about that at the beginning today, right? So again, I'll say, please do your patrolling if you haven't done yet, so that you can submit those grades. And the other piece that a lot of us need to remember for is when you go input your grades in the grade roster in UNLV, there's a grade roster action tab sort of towards the top right, maybe about a third down, and you select approved. Until your grades are approved and saved that way, grades are not finalized. So you'd want to make sure and do that. Before you approve them, you can also, there's a step for that. I'm looking at everybody, hoping somebody can remember what the word is. Review status. You select review and then look at them again. I do that because I tend to make mistakes and I need to double, triple check everything and then select approved. Okay. Grades are usually due the Tuesday by 4 p.m. at the end after finals week. That's the date to remember. I usually ask everybody and double check with your department. Some departments ask everyone to their grades submit the day before that. So make sure you follow that. Even if your deadline is Tuesday at 4 p.m. after finals, I encourage you to submit the day before in case there's a glitch or something happens in the system or you find a mistake. Okay. How to handle incompletes and failing grades. So the first thing I always ask myself is get in contact with this student. Hopefully it is not a surprise end of the semester that's coming, but sometimes it is. Particularly with incomplete, the student has successfully been participating in the class and passing the class, at least 75%, I believe is the UNLV rule. They can ask for that complete. If you grant an incomplete, they have the to finish that coursework. So it's really important that you stay in contact with faculty mentor or your program coordinator, because someone has to follow up on that incomplete with that student. So make sure that you're in contact with someone in the department that is. Every department may a little bit different, so check with them on that. If someone's failing, when you go to input a grade of, it's going to ask you the last date of attendance. And so what I do is I go in Canvas, and the way, if you click on the student to get the information of the last time that they went to Canvas into that course. And I use that as my last attendance for asynchronous courses and online courses. If they're face-to-face classes, then I usually use the last time that I saw them in, right? As the last date of attendance. So Canvas can help you answer that question. If you have someone failing, again, I just want to reiterate, I hope that you've been in touch with them, reaching out. You may need responses back, but we want to make sure we're doing everything we can to support that student. Is there anything else that they need? Are they aware of their responsibilities? Are they aware that they did not turn in certain items? Sometimes you'll have a student who thinks they've put something in, but it didn't submit. We want to give them grace and that space. And Dr. Morgan is saying, we lead with kindness and good intention to help them as much as possible, right? Before giving them that failing grade. If you give an incomplete, another piece to just be of, and you look this up through UNLV website as well. If they do go through and finish up the course requirement in the time offered, which is the following semester, then that grade turns into an F automatically. So it is important that someone follow up with that student, okay? Also, it is a courtesy. I always appreciate it when my part-time instructors let me know when they've submitted their grades, just so that I know that that is done, and that they are, you know, free and clear. There's no incompletes, and I get any, you know, heads up if there's anything that I need to be concerned about. And the final, just you've probably experienced this. I know I experienced this as a student as well as an instructor, but the closer it gets to finals week, the more stress, the more illnesses, the more tragic life seem to pile up, right? Just again, leading with that kindness piece that Dr. Morgan was talking about, particularly right now during a pandemic and everything that's happening for everyone, right? We need to have a little grace, not only with our students, with ourselves, and understand that we might need a little self-care in the midst of taking care of others. So I hope that you do for yourself. And if you, please reach out to your faculty mentor or program coordinator, your contact in the department, so that we can help support each other, right? So we're all in this together. All right, so with that, I'm going to close the PowerPoint and open it for questions for the panelists to try and answer. One question that someone asked me was, is there a way to make announcements that you send up to the class more personal or even color-coded per class? So some students have suggested that they just receive so many announcements and sometimes they don't filter through. I don't have a good answer for that, but maybe another panelist does. I know if there's something really important or really time sensitive, I do what some of my students do in emails to me, and I put in all cap or bold or ASE or put a time limit on it. Sometimes that helps. If I need something specific from a certain set of students, I'll just email them directly rather than the group announcement, or I'll do both, but I don't have a better solution.
I started, I'll tell you, I'm going to give you this suggestion, but I'm not deep into it. So I don't, if it doesn't work, don't come yell at me. Google Chats, the chat box started to allow you to create rooms where you can enroll members of that room, where you can have more of an ongoing conversation, and it can kind of split. So in the fall, it's kind of like Slack, if you've used Slack before, but it's built into the G Suite at UNLV. And so starting in the fall, I did start to build rooms where I posted announcements, and then students could ask each other questions. It's kind of like a discussion thread on the Web Campus portal. But that kind of kept everything together in one Google chat room where they could get information. But I think, you know, I was just saying, as soon as Dr. Hoskins said that, I was like, that's a good point, because I may send out an announcement, but they're enrolled in 4 classes. And so they're getting 3 other sets of announcements from me. So it is something to take pause and remember that we're not the only class that they're registered in. So that can get complicated, but there might be ways to do like little chat rooms or different ways to separate out some of that information. One thing I did learn in the fall is to streamline announcements, because I'm those of you who know me well, I'm infamous for writing many-page emails, and I was like, they're getting many-page emails from many of us, so I've got to figure out how to get to the point, use bullets. I started on announcements like putting number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4, that in this email this information is covered, and then I code the content underneath of the email. So then that way, if they only need to read about item 2, they can just go find item 2 in the email and they can read about that. So that is one way that I started to chunk information in the fall semester to support that. But anyway, you can streamline attention for students. I know somebody said in the chat box, Bitmojis. I had some instructors use Bitmoji and Bitmoji classrooms. I'm not that creative, so I have not used them, but when people do, it's so impressive. So if you've got the skills to make personalized, creative, technological access for your students, I always think that's brilliant, because it does kind of set it apart and is more engaging to review.
If I could ask a question of the group, if Dr. Hoskins earlier mentioned rubrics, and I'm just curious if you do use them. Because I do think that really saves a lot of time, and they're informative too. So if you have questions about how to build them, there is a feature in Web Campus where you can build rubrics. There's all sorts of things and examples out there on the internet if you're not really sure what we're talking about. But the better your rubric, the more time you save and the more feedback your students can get. So I think everybody wins when rubrics are used. So I was just curious if, okay, looks like some of you are. That's great.
Using the rubrics, if you have rubrics or checklists or things like that in your syllabus, when I started at university, I was like, why aren't students following this? It's in there. Why don't they look at it? And my department chair at the time gave me some of the best advice I ever got. And he said, did you ever teach them how to use the rubric? And I was like, well, no, it's in there. Shouldn't they know? And he was like, don't assume they know something if you've not actually explicitly taught them. From that day on, I've just taken a little bit of class time before every assignment that comes up and just say, here's the rubric. This is what I'm looking for. Here's the headers I would use. And it really helps for students who are in college for the first time, maybe in graduate school for the first time, et cetera. It kind of demystifies what that rubric is, because I did find once he made that point, I was like, oh my gosh, that's I never have taught that. And so no wonder they're not using it, because I never brought that attention. And so really showing how to use that rubric has been hugely helpful. And I've just used that in every class I've ever taught. I do it every semester, whenever assignment is coming due, to just walk through it and make sure that they're drawing their attention to that rubric explicitly. Now you would still, and many of you who've taught before would still be shocked that people still don't follow the rubric, even after you walked through it, but at least you've shown them and demystified it and unpacked it at that point. And then you can kind of give specific examples of like, okay, here's why the rubric point was missed itself. So if you do have rubrics, if you're newer, those of you who have been around for a while, you've probably done this before, but if you're newer, I just encourage you to don't assume that just because it's in there, people know what they're supposed to do with it. And so if you really want them to pay attention to that rubric, draw their attention to it in some specific way, shape, or form. And then that way they know I'm grading using this. And so I need to pay attention to this, because not all, hey, I've worked with some instructors who have rubrics who then don't use that for grading, or it's not clear how it's aligned to grading. So I think taking a little bit of time helps you as the instructor. It's always great when I say, these are the headings, use these as your headers in your paper. When I go to grade, then it's also much more efficient to grade, because the headers I'm looking for in the rubric, I've already preloaded that information that this is what I want to see in the paper itself. So it saves you some time to just draw their attention to it explicitly.
So maybe as we finish out, does anybody have any great motivational, inspirational comments to get us all jazzed for spring semester? I'm seeing facial reaction to the request.
I'll share. I'll tell you, I was having a conversation earlier that I was like, I know it's stressful. I know this is a weird time. Many of you who love teaching, this is not the way we signed. None of us signed up to do it in this strange pandemic timeframe. But I was having a conversation earlier where we really like kind of honed in on that idea that we are having the opportunity right now to shape what's coming next. And so in an uncertain time where we're not sure what's happening, we have the ability to influence leaders in our field for what's going to come after this. And so pandemic and the world in the last few years have shown us inequities that exist in a variety of different spaces. And so while it's strange and we feel very unsettled, we also have the opportunity to shoot our students forward into the future and say, how do we address these moving forward? And so it is one way that I keep my positive energy when I do this work, because it is very strange right now, but we can ask important questions and teach new skills to try to address some of these variables we've identified as creators of barriers and inequities now. How do we do it differently moving forward? So I just encourage you, when you're feeling stressed, I know that this might not be helpful right now, but when you're feeling stressed, just remember that we're educating the people of tomorrow to move our fields forward into a different place. And so I just think that's exciting and sometimes helps me get out of the current moment and remember that even though this isn't the way I signed up to do this, I still love doing this, and that's what we want to continue to do.
If y'all are following chat, and Joke had a question about how long you might give a student for a deeply personal issue on an extension for an assignment. And I think that, as Joe had said and some others had said, this is going to be an instructor's discretion, but one thing that I would impress upon you is to be consistent within and across your courses. If there are inconsistencies, then we come across some different things that we shouldn't have to talk about as department chairs. So just exercise your judgment, look to your peers and your co's to find out what might be an appropriate amount of time. There was a suggestion to ask the student how much time they think they might need. If it becomes too much of an issue, we get into challenges associated with incompletes. My experience has told me incompletes seem like a good idea on the surface, but the vast majority of them convert to failing grades. It's really a challenge to follow through on those. The situations likely remain the same the next semester. It just becomes more challenging.
Any last encouraging, motivational, inspirational words? I'm not sure we can top Dr. Morgan's, but
I'll just add that I completely agree that grace is a good thing for all of us right now.
Well, thank you again, everyone. That sometimes does not get said often enough, but we're all in this together. Let's help each other and our students and have a wonderful semester.